Imagine a time long before modern banking, credit cards, or digital transactions. A time where trade routes stretched across vast lands, connecting distant civilizations empire to empire, continent to continent. This was the Silk Road, the lifeblood of commerce, culture, and diplomacy in the ancient world. But hidden beneath the flowing silk, the precious spices, and the lavish goods was an underground economy. A shadow system of illicit finance that fueled not just trade, but the rise and fall of some of the most powerful empires in history. Today, we're going to uncover the dark side of the Silk Road, a world of covert deals, untraceable wealth, and financial systems that operated outside the law. Let's take a deep dive into the world of illicit finance that helped shape the fates of ancient empires. The Silk Road was more than just one long road. It was a complex network of trade routes that stretched from China all the way to the Mediterranean, connecting the East and West. As trade grew, so did the need for currency, goods, and services. From the 2nd century BCE to the 15th century CE, the Silk Road was bustling with merchants, travelers, and armies, but it was not just the legitimate economy that thrived. While the trade routes were renowned for transporting silk, jade, and spices, they also carried a more dangerous cargo: weapons, slaves, and illegal contraband. Goods that were forbidden by law in one country were exchanged in the shadows, hidden away from the prying eyes of emperors and rulers. The Silk Road wasn't just a conduit for the exchange of luxury goods. It was also a means of smuggling. The economic boom that the Silk Road facilitated also created a perfect storm for illicit activity. One of the primary forms of illegal trade was weapons. Powerful empires like the Roman Empire and the Han Dynasty had strict laws controlling weapon sales. Yet these weapons still flowed across the borders through the network of smugglers. Additionally, slaves were a significant part of the illicit economy along the Silk Road. These human traffickers, operating under the radar of law enforcement, transported men, women, and children from one empire to another, often with deadly consequences. While slavery was a known practice in ancient times, the massive scale of human trafficking along the Silk Road remains a disturbing aspect of this shadow economy. But the illicit trade didn't stop with weapons and humans. Many of the spices, herbs, and substances that were in high demand were strictly controlled, or outright banned by governments due to their addictive or dangerous properties. Opium was one such item that found its way onto the Silk Road. The opium trade would go on to fuel not just the Silk Road's shadow economy, but also influence the global history of drugs and addiction. In the world of illicit finance on the Silk Road, middlemen played a crucial role. These were the traders who understood the intricacies of cross-border negotiations, bypassing tax collectors and the authority of local rulers. They knew how to navigate the complexities of the law and avoid detection, often paying off local authorities to keep their goods moving freely. At the heart of this illicit network were the nomads, tribes who knew the land and could hide their wares in places that even the most experienced officials couldn't find. These nomads also had a reputation for being excellent horse riders, making them the perfect carriers for smuggled goods, whether they were opium, weapons, or stolen treasures. Traders who worked within the shadow economy of the Silk Road often lived in secrecy, trusted only by a small circle of high-ranking officials or wealthy elites. These traders were experts in the art of negotiation, but their business wasn't just about the goods. They were also highly skilled in hiding their true profits, laundering money, and keeping their operations secret. Much like modern-day illicit financial systems, the Silk Road's shadow economy had its own form of banking. While gold and silver were the standard currencies in most regions, the real money was in the trade of precious metals, gemstones, and even stolen artifacts. But with empires constantly in flux, it was not always safe to keep wealth in one place. One way the ancient empires moved their illicit wealth was through a form of early money laundering. Wealthy merchants and traders, fearing the attention of local rulers or foreign governments, developed complex systems to conceal their profits. These systems often involved a network of safe houses where gold, gems, and other precious goods could be stored away from the authorities. These safe houses were often located in remote areas or under the protection of trusted, powerful individuals who would vouch for their safety. Corruption was at the core of the Silk Road's shadow economy. Rulers, governors, and military commanders were often bribed to overlook illegal transactions or to turn a blind eye to criminal activities. In fact, some of the most powerful empires relied on bribery and corruption to maintain the flow of illegal goods. In ancient China, for instance, the imperial government was notorious for using corruption as a tool to expand its control over trade routes. Regional officials were often complicit in the smuggling of goods, knowing that their personal wealth could be greatly increased by allowing illicit trade to flourish under their watch. At the same time, the Persian Empire, which was strategically positioned between the East and the West, became a major player in the Silk Road's underground economy. Persian merchants were not just wealthy. They were also incredibly resourceful in avoiding the laws and taxes imposed by both the Romans and the Chinese. Persia, with its powerful military and vast empire, used its influence to protect the flow of illicit goods and to maintain the secrecy of its operations. The shadow economy on the Silk Road was not without consequence. While it helped fuel the wealth and expansion of certain empires, it also played a part in their eventual downfall. The Roman Empire, for example, experienced a massive influx of wealth from trade along the Silk Road, but it was also dealing with a growing problem of corruption, economic inequality, and military overstretch. The illicit trade of gold and silver, combined with an over-reliance on slaves and illegal goods, undermined the Roman economy. As the empire's wealth was siphoned off through underground networks, the empire's infrastructure began to crumble. The same illicit forces that fueled the empire's growth eventually led to its slow and painful decline. Similarly, the Han Dynasty in China, one of the most powerful empires in history, relied heavily on trade along the Silk Road to sustain its economy. Yet, as the wealth generated by illicit finance grew, so did corruption. The same nomadic tribes that transported illegal goods also contributed to political instability. By the time the Han Dynasty fell, much of its wealth had disappeared into the hands of smugglers and corrupt officials, weakening the empire from within. While the Silk Road may no longer exist as a tangible trade route, its shadow economy left a lasting legacy that still impacts the world today. The patterns of illicit trade, money laundering, and corruption established during this period set the stage for the modern world's underground financial systems. Today, criminal organizations, terrorist groups, and corrupt governments continue to follow the blueprint established by those early Silk Road traders and smugglers. The Silk Road taught us a powerful lesson. Illicit finance has always been a shadowy but integral part of human civilization. It was not just the goods that moved across the ancient trade routes, but also the flow of money and power that shaped the fates of empires. As we look at the world today, it is clear that the legacy of the Silk Road's shadow economy is alive and well, continuing to influence the geopolitical landscape of our modern world. Where we dive deeper into the modern parallels to the Silk Road's illicit economy, and how its lessons continue to echo through history. We'll also explore how some of the world's largest economies still struggle to control the shadows cast by these ancient trade routes. We unearthed the hidden financial networks that thrived along the Silk Road, a place where illicit trade, money laundering, and underground economies played a pivotal role in shaping ancient empires. From weapons and slaves to opium and stolen treasures, the Silk Road was not just a trade route, it was a battlefield of finance, where shadowy figures and corrupt officials ensured that illicit wealth flowed freely across borders. Now we turn our attention to the lasting legacy of this hidden economy. The Silk Road's shadow economy didn't vanish with the collapse of the empires that once relied on it. Instead, its influence lives on today. We will explore how the financial practices born on the Silk Road have endured through time, shaping modern illicit trade and influencing global power structures. From contemporary money laundering schemes to the black market trade of precious goods, the lessons from the Silk Road continue to inform our understanding of the hidden side of global finance. Just as the Silk Road was a network of trade that spanned vast distances, today's illicit financial systems are global in scope. The Silk Road's legacy can be traced directly to the ways in which illegal goods ranging from drugs to weapons to counterfeit currency are moved across borders. But the key difference between ancient and modern illicit trade is the scale and complexity of the networks in place today. These illegal markets are no longer confined to the rugged terrain of Central Asia or the deserts of the Middle East. They are sophisticated, involving multinational cartels, complex financial instruments, and a shadow banking system that operates parallel to global finance. One of the most notable examples of this is the drug trade, which has roots that can be traced back to the opium trade along the Silk Road. While the specific goods may have changed, the methods of smuggling, laundering money, and bribing officials have remained eerily similar. Today, cartels in Latin America, Southeast Asia, and the Middle East control vast networks of drug trafficking that span the globe, using the same methods that ancient traders employed to conceal their illegal transactions. The illicit trade in weapons is another direct descendant of the Silk Road's shadow economy. Just as ancient empires covertly traded weapons, today's arms dealers operate in a global market, often hidden behind layers of shell companies, offshore accounts, and complex financial transactions. These arms dealers supply weapons to regions embroiled in conflict, perpetuating violence and instability. In ancient times, wealthy merchants and traders used a variety of methods to launder their illicit profits, often through safe houses or by moving wealth through trusted intermediaries. Today, money laundering is a multi-trillion-dollar industry that is far more complex, involving intricate networks of banks, offshore accounts, and digital currencies. One of the most famous examples of modern money laundering is the Panama Papers scandal, which revealed how wealthy individuals and corporations used shell companies to hide assets and avoid taxes. This practice mirrors the techniques used by Silk Road traders, who would conceal their wealth in remote locations or launder money through a series of intermediaries. In the modern world, the rise of cryptocurrencies has also introduced new challenges for tracking illicit financial flows. Digital currencies like Bitcoin and Ethereum are often used to facilitate anonymous transactions, creating opportunities for money laundering, terrorist financing, and other illegal activities. While these technologies have legitimate uses, they also present a new set of challenges for global financial regulators, who are struggling to keep up with the pace of innovation in the illicit finance world. In Part 1, we saw how corruption played a central role in facilitating the illicit economy of the Silk Road. Rulers, governors, and military commanders were often bribed to overlook illegal activities, allowing smugglers and traders to continue their operations. This form of institutional corruption has not disappeared in modern times. In fact, it remains a major factor in enabling illicit trade. Today, corruption continues to be a key enabler of the global shadow economy. In many countries, politicians and business leaders accept bribes or engage in corrupt practices to facilitate the flow of illicit goods. This is particularly true in countries with weak rule of law or where organized crime groups have significant influence over political processes. The modern parallels to the corruption scene along the Silk Road can be seen in the way illicit trade operates in regions like Africa, Latin America, and Southeast Asia. In these areas, corrupt officials often turn a blind eye to illegal activities in exchange for financial gain. Whether it's drug trafficking, illegal logging, or the trade of human organs, the shadow economy is often allowed to thrive due to corrupt political systems that prioritize personal wealth over the welfare of their citizens. The same networks of organized crime that thrived on the Silk Road have evolved into powerful cartels and syndicates in the modern world. In the 21st century, these criminal organizations operate on a scale that rivals legitimate businesses, generating billions of dollars in revenue from illegal activities. The modern Mexican drug cartels, such as the Sinaloa and Jalisco New Generation cartels, are direct descendants of the Silk Road's underground economy. These cartels control vast networks of drug trafficking, using a combination of bribery, violence, and smuggling routes that mirror the methods employed by ancient traders. Similarly, the Chinese triads and the Russian mafia are examples of transnational crime organizations that span the globe, engaging in everything from human trafficking to the illegal sale of counterfeit goods. These organizations maintain close ties with political elites and law enforcement, enabling them to operate with relative impunity. The structure of these modern cartels is not unlike the smuggling operations of the Silk Road. They are decentralized networks with multiple layers of intermediaries, each responsible for different aspects of the trade. This decentralization makes it difficult for authorities to track and dismantle these criminal networks, as they operate in a shadowy world where information is carefully guarded. While the Silk Road was originally known for its exchange of goods like silk, spices, and precious metals, it was also a major conduit for the trade of illegal items. The smuggling of opium, weapons, and slaves during the height of the Silk Road's influence is a practice that has continued into the modern world, albeit in a more sophisticated form. Today, the global trade of illicit goods remains one of the most lucrative black markets. The illegal drug trade, for example, generates billions of dollars every year, with illegal substances being trafficked across international borders at an alarming rate. Just like in the past, these drugs often pass through a complex web of smugglers, corrupt officials, and hidden channels. The trade of counterfeit goods is another modern example of the Silk Road's legacy. The market for fake luxury items, from designer handbags to fake medicines, has exploded in recent years. These goods are often manufactured in one country, smuggled through others, and sold to unsuspecting consumers. This illegal trade not only undermines legitimate businesses, but also contributes to the global black market economy that traces its roots back to the Silk Road. As we look to the future, it's clear that the fight against illicit finance will require a multifaceted approach, one that addresses both the modern and ancient legacies of the Silk Road's shadow economy. Governments and international organizations are beginning to recognize the need for stronger, regulatory frameworks to combat the growing threat of money laundering, human trafficking, and the illegal trade of goods. One of the most important lessons from the Silk Road's illicit economy is the role of transparency. In order to disrupt these global networks, authorities must work together across borders, sharing information and coordinating efforts. This is no small task, as many of these illicit trade routes operate in regions where governments are weak or corrupt. To successfully combat modern illicit finance, we must learn from the tactics used by ancient empires and their adversaries. Just as traders on the Silk Road used a combination of secrecy, bribery, and complex networks to hide their profits, today's illicit financiers rely on similar techniques to avoid detection. By understanding the historical context of these financial systems, we can begin to unravel the complex web of illicit trade that continues to thrive in the shadows. The Silk Road was not just a conduit for the exchange of goods, it was the birthplace of many of the financial systems that continue to shape the modern world. The illicit trade, money laundering, and corruption that fueled ancient empires laid the groundwork for today's global shadow economy. While the Silk Road itself may have faded into history, the lessons it provides about illicit finance, global trade, and corruption remain relevant today. From the global drug trade to the rise of powerful criminal syndicates, the shadow economy of the Silk Road has evolved, but its roots are still deeply embedded in the fabric of modern society. The next time you hear about international cartels, money laundering, or the illegal trade of goods, remember the Silk Road. It's not just ancient history, it's a part of the present-day world we live in. And its legacy continues to shape the way illicit finance operates in the shadows.